God, I just want a dad." She whispered it in the stillness of a snowy New Year's Eve church. Not for toys, not for candy, just a father who would stay. She didn't know her words had reached the ears of a stranger in the back pew, a millionaire who had lost his own family, and whose life would never be the same after that night. Because sometimes the most unforgettable prayers aren't shouted. They're whispered and answered in ways no one expects. The church glowed with soft candlelight, warm against the chill of a snowy New Year's Eve. Families filled the pews, laughing quietly, waiting for the midnight bell. In the second row, a little girl no older than 6 knelt on the cushion. Her dark curls tumbled over her shoulders as she pressed her hands together. "God," she whispered, "if I could have one New Year's gift, I want a dad, please, just one who will stay." Her voice was barely louder than a breath, but it carried across the stillness to the very back of the church, where a man sat alone. His name was Daniel Carter. To the rest of the world, he was a successful businessman. Tonight, he was just a man trying to forget the ache of another year without his family. He'd buried his wife 3 years ago, their unborn child too. Holidays had become nothing but noise to him. But now here was a child asking for something he couldn't stop hearing. The girl's mother, Emily, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come on, Lila," she murmured gently. Lila rose, slipping her small hand into her mother's. Daniel's eyes followed them as they walked out into the snow. Something about the way Lila had said stay lodged deep in his chest. And Daniel Carter knew. He wouldn't forget her voice anytime soon. Daniel didn't move as the congregation spilled into the snowy street, voices lifting in happy chatter. The midnight countdown was minutes away, but he stayed in his pew, staring at the place where the little girl had knelt. Stay, that word echoed in his mind like a bell. Finally, he stepped outside. The snowflakes drifted down slow and heavy, coating the street in white. Far ahead, Emily and Lila walked arm in arm, the girl hopping to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Daniel's breath clouded in the cold, but he didn't follow. Back in his penthouse that night, the city fireworks were nothing but silent bursts behind the glass. He sat in the dark, replaying the scene, her small voice, her mother's tired smile, that aching wish. By morning, he'd convinced himself it was just a moment, until he remembered his mother's old saying, "If something touches your heart and you can't let it go, maybe it's because you were meant to do something about it." He made a call. A friend who worked at the local shelter knew Emily. She wasn't a regular, too proud to ask for help, but she worked multiple part-time jobs and lived with Lila in a small, drafty apartment above a laundromat. Daniel stared at the ceiling that night. He'd spent years building towers and businesses, but none of it had filled the hollow space inside him. For the first time in years, he felt the pull to step into someone else's story. The next afternoon, Emily opened her apartment door to find a small bag of groceries resting on the mat. Bread, milk, fresh fruit, and a note. "Happy New Year. For you and Lila. No signature." Lila's eyes widened. "Mommy, is it from God?" Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe it's just a kind neighbor." From his car across the street, Daniel watched them bring the bag inside. Lila danced around the kitchen, her laughter spilling into the cold air when Emily opened the window for a moment. The following week, repairs were quietly made to their building's cracked staircase. A new heater appeared in the hallway, courtesy of anonymous maintenance. Daniel told himself he was simply returning a kindness he wished someone had shown him once. But the truth was, he'd started to look forward to the moments when he caught sight of Lila. Her joy unfiltered, her trust unshaken. One evening, he saw them outside the corner store. Emily was carrying 2 heavy bags when a gust of wind nearly knocked Lila over. Daniel stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Here, let me help," he said, taking one of the bags. Emily hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I've got it." "I know," Daniel replied gently. "But it's cold. Let me walk you home." That night, Lila waved at him from their window as he left. And for the first time in years, Daniel's smile was real. Over the next few weeks, Daniel found himself in their neighborhood more often. Sometimes he caught sight of Emily helping an elderly neighbor carry laundry. Sometimes he saw Lila skipping home from school, her backpack bouncing. He never intended for them to know about the groceries, the repairs, the heater. But truth has a way of surfacing. One Friday afternoon, Emily was stacking books in the small library where she worked part-time when her coworker nudged her. "Hey, isn't that the guy you were talking to outside the store?" She turned her phone around. On the screen was a news headline. Real estate mogul Daniel Carter announces new foundation for families in need. A glossy photo of him in a tailored suit and city skyline behind him filled the screen. Emily froze. She barely heard her coworker say, "Looks like he's got more than enough to help." The pieces clicked in her mind. The groceries, the repairs, the heater. Her stomach tightened. That evening, she spotted Daniel outside the cafe near their building. He smiled, but she didn't. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice low but firm. He sighed. "Because I knew you'd push me away. You think I'm a project? A cause for your charity?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "I think you're a mother who works harder than anyone I've met. I just wanted to make things easier." But Emily shook her head. "You should have let me choose who gets to help my daughter." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the falling snow. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He replayed her words until dawn, realizing she was right. He had stepped into their lives without asking. The next day, he knocked on Emily's door. When she opened it, he didn't try to explain himself. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I should have respected your trust." Emily studied him for a moment, her hand resting on the doorframe. "Why us?" she asked. Daniel's voice softened. "Because I heard your daughter ask God for a dad on New Year's Eve, and I lost my own child before she was born. That wish, it stayed with me." Her expression shifted, the edges of her guardedness softening. "You lost your wife too, didn't you?" He nodded. 3 years ago. For the first time, Emily didn't look at him like a stranger. She looked at him like someone who understood loss. "Lila's at the park," she said after a pause. "You can walk with us later if you want." Daniel smiled faintly. "I'd like that." The park was dusted with snow, the swing swaying gently in the breeze. Lila spotted him first. "Hi," she shouted, running over. "You're the man from the store." Daniel laughed. "And you must be the best snowball thrower in town." She giggled and handed him a lumpy snowball. "You have to help me build the biggest snowman before it gets dark." For the next hour, they rolled snow, found sticks for arms, and argued about whether the snowman needed 2 scarves. Emily watched from a bench, her lips curving into a reluctant smile. When they walked home, Lila skipped between them, holding both their hands. "Mommy," she said suddenly, "do you think God heard my New Year's wish?" Emily glanced at Daniel, then back at her daughter. "Maybe," she said softly. "Sometimes answers take time." Daniel felt something warm unfurl in his chest. For the first time, he let himself wonder if he could be part of the answer. New Year's Eve came around again faster than anyone expected. Snow fell thick and steady, the streets glowing under strings of lights. That evening, Emily and Lila walked into the same church they had the year before, and found Daniel already there, waiting in the front pew. When the service ended, he turned to Lila, kneeling so his eyes were level with hers. "Do you remember what you wished for last year?" She nodded eagerly. "I asked for a dad." Daniel swallowed. "Would it be okay if I tried to be that for you?" Lila blinked, then threw her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered fiercely. When he stood, Emily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Emily," he said gently, "I can't replace what's been lost, but I can stand with you both, if you'll let me." She took a shaky breath. "I think maybe we've both been waiting long enough." A year later, the 3 of them stood in the small park where they'd built their first snowman. Lila, now taller and even more talkative, was decorating this year's snowman with glittery mittens. Emily wrapped her arm through Daniel's. "You know," she said, "she still calls that night her best New Year's gift." Daniel smiled. "It was mine too." That night, as fireworks bloomed over the snowy town, Lila leaned against him and whispered, "Thanks for staying." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere, kiddo." Emily glanced at him, her eyes warm in the glow of the fireworks. And in that moment, Daniel knew he'd found what he'd been missing. Not just a family, but a reason to look forward to the years ahead. Because sometimes the greatest gifts aren't wrapped in ribbons. They're whispered in the quiet and answered when someone chooses to stay. If this story touched you, hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories.